As of today, we're going to talk about the major Kern County earthquake that occurred earlier this morning at 4:52 a.m., just 23 miles south of Bakersfield. The magnitude of the earthquake was 7.5. Now we will talk to the seismologist, Ms. Sodhi, who will tell our viewers about the general knowledge of earthquakes. Ms. Ashner, so for the better understanding of our viewers, would you please tell us how the earthquakes are measured?
Earthquakes are basically measured in seismic waves, which is a vibration that travels throughout the earth during an earthquake. And we take this data and turn it into a seismograph.
So how is the magnitude measured?
Well, we use a Richter scale to measure the magnitude of the earthquake, and the magnitude is measured through the logarithm of the amplitude of the waves, which are recorded in the seismograph. And like an earthquake around 2 or less is a micro earthquake, whereas a moderate is around 5.8, and a major is around 6.9 or more. And every 10 volts that take place equals 1 amplitude.
Find the intensity of an earthquake.
Intensity is basically the shaking of the surface, and it's mostly determined by the local acceleration and how long it continues. The damage is the most important part in it because the geologic setting that you're at is the most important part that plays a main role towards the damage. Like in some areas, damage could be more, whereas in some areas it's less. It depends on the buildings you have and the structures and like the area that it's building.
Ms. Sodhi, what's the most important part in this process?
The most important part is the S waves and the P waves. S waves are slow and they can only pass through solids, whereas the P waves are fast and they could pass through liquids and solids.
Now we will talk to our geographer, Ms. Sodhi, who will go into more information about earthquakes. Ms. Sodhi, would you please tell us some more information on Kern County earthquakes?
July 21st, 1952, around 4:52 a.m., an earthquake measured of a magnitude of 7.5 occurred south of Bakersfield in Kern County. The earthquake occurred on the White Wolf Fault, north of the intersection of the Garlock and San Andreas Fault. The world's greatest earthquake zone is in the Crown Pacific Seismic Belt, which is on the rim of the Pacific Ocean. The earthquake can strike at any time, however they have been recorded to strike in a similar pattern over the years. The Alpine Belt extends from Java to Sumatra through the Himalayas, Mediterranean, and out into the Atlantic. It accounts for 17% of the world's largest earthquakes. The last belt begins with the submerged mid-Atlantic ridge. The earthquakes in this area result in very damaging shocks around New Madrid, Missouri, Charleston, and South Carolina. The belt goes from Chile northward along the South American coast through Central America, Mexico, west coast of the U.S., to the southern parts of Alaska through Japan, Philippine Islands, islands of Southwest Pacific. The most devastating earthquakes around the time of 1952 were in 1946 in Nankaido, Japan, and in the Aleutian Islands. The 8.4 magnitude earthquake on December 21st caused a lot of damage because it caused a tsunami to occur, which washed away 1,451 houses and caused 1,500 deaths. The earthquake in the Aleutian Islands was also quite devastating. It had caused 159 people to die in Hawaii and 5 in Alaska. The reason why the earthquake caused so many deaths was because it occurred on April 1st. And many people assumed for the warnings of the tsunami to be an April Fool's Day joke. So many people did not reach higher ground as they were told and decided to stay on the beaches instead.
Now we will take you live to our geologist, Ms. Kern, who will go into more details about earthquakes.
White Wolf Fault, a zone of left lateral reverse faulting north of the intersection of San Andreas and Garlock Fault. As you can see, the San Andreas Fault and Garlock Fault are connected together, whereas the White Wolf Fault is short in length compared to both of them. The fault was not previously considered a major threat, but the size of the fault seemed disproportionate to the length of the fault which ruptured. Due to displacement at the surface above 4 feet, which seemed less for the energy released, it's possible that the fault is buried. A slip may have occurred beneath the surface where only a meter or so is seen on the ground floor. The Kern County earthquake claimed 12 lives, 18 injuries, and caused at least $50 million in property damage.
We're now going to consult the historian, Ms. Nancy Saini, who will provide us with the information on the similar major earthquakes that have occurred in the past.
Yes, Ms. Gill, some of the major earthquakes that are similar to the Kern County earthquake are the Fort Chehan and San Francisco earthquake. The 1906 San Francisco earthquake struck the coast of Northern California on Wednesday, April 18 around 5:20 a.m. Devastating fire broke out in the city, which lasted for several days. As a result of the fire, more than 3,000 people were died and more than 50% of the San Francisco city was destroyed. The earthquake and the fire caused by the earthquake are remembered as one of the worst natural disasters in the history of the United States. The magnitude of the earthquake was recorded to be 8.2. The Fort Chehan earthquake occurred on January 9, 1857 around 8:20 in the central and southern part of the San Andreas Fault. 7.9 magnitude earthquake caused the rivers to spill over its bank and destroy the sea life. If you observe the time of the Fort Chehan, San Francisco, and Kern County earthquake, we noticed that they all occurred in the early morning and people were not informed. Social consequences of the earthquake were that affected people's life. For example, in San Francisco, people saw the people burning and they begged the police officers to be shot.
So we have Miss Navneet Kaur, who's a disaster worker, live with us right now. Miss Navneet, could you please provide our viewers with some of the general information that occurs during an earthquake, like the disaster and the recovery from the earthquake? Yes, during an earthquake, most of the disaster is caused by fire, liquefaction, ground motion, permanent displacement of land, and tsunamis. Most of the disaster is caused by fire. As you all can see, behind us is a house which is burned down due to an intense fire that occurred during an earthquake. The pipelines broke, so there was no way for people to put off the fire. There was no water or electricity. During an earthquake, buildings collapse, which are not reinforced to the bedrock. Brick buildings collapse really easily. If you look at Bakersfield now, there's hardly ever any brick buildings now. It's all wooden buildings. During this earthquake, several pipelines were broken and salt beds were disturbed. Downtown Bakersfield was heavily impacted. Many buildings were destroyed and it required a lot of construction. Bakersfield City Council and people from other institutes like in affected region to set up the instruments and record the strong motion records and study the other damages occurred at that particular event. That's it for today. This is your host Najat Gill. See you guys back at the same time tomorrow. Till then, keep shaking. You know it's bad for the earth, but good for your health. For more information, email us at bakersfieldnews@gmail.com. Don't forget joke of the day. Thank you.